We have a very special interview today on Locked On NHL. Former NHL player and Stanley Cup champion Dan Carcillo joins us to talk about his career, his life after hockey, and what he's advocating for NHL players and others. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. And Rachel, we have a special guest today.
We do, one with a history related to the team I cover, the Philadelphia Flyers, of course. And he has become a fierce advocate for players post-career, and it was very exciting to talk to him.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we will welcome in our guest, Dan Carcillo. It is our pleasure right now to welcome to the show Daniel Carcillo, a former Stanley Cup champion, NHL player, and now advocate. Daniel, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. How are you doing, Gil?
Good. Great to have you here. Looking back at your career, when was it that you first realized that you had a chance to play in the NHL?
I think it was when I was 14. I played Double-A most of my life, and I made the jump to Triple-A. We had a really good team with, Anthony Stewart and Brent Burns and a lot of NHL players that have had a, decently long career. And I remember just getting scouted and thinking to myself that this could be a ticket out of King City. I grew up in a pretty small town. And obviously everybody's dream was to make something of yourself. And so when I ended up getting drafted in the 6th round to Sarnia, and Dino Ciccarelli's and Gagne was our coach, they recruited me pretty heavily, and I just decided to, take the OHL route, and ended up, then getting drafted the next year, and things happened pretty quickly thereafter.
And as far as your path to the NHL following that, how did you view that process? Because I know you look a lot at it now, like in the rearview mirror in terms of your advocacy work. But how would you describe the process of okay, once you're drafted, here's how you mentally and physically get yourself ready for the NHL?
Yeah, so, preface all of this with nobody really knows what we're doing. We are, kids playing a grown-up game. And when you move away and you go and play in the OHL, you're playing against guys that are sometimes 4 or 5 years older than you. So that's really the first time that you're out of your own age group. And I think like anything else in life, you ask for help, and you try to mimic or you fake it till you make it. That was like a big saying in hockey. You just pretend like you've been there before. And the guys that can do that better than the most tend to stick around. And I attached myself to a few players that I thought were going to have a really long career in the NHL. And I just tried to add things to my game that almost as if I was putting things on my resume in order to, just really try to figure it out. I didn't fight at all in the OHL. I scored 30 goals a year, which wasn't a crazy amount of goals, but it ended up getting me drafted in the top 70. And then when I started fighting, I did that because of how hard I played the game, and then people were kind of coming after me, and I started beating people up, and then all of a sudden you're known for that, after 2 or 3 fights. So that was something that I just had to do. And then something that I figured out that I really actually enjoyed. And then I realized that could like really, help me get into the league, but really like help me stay in the league. It was just like another thing that other guys weren't willing to do. So yeah, you fake it till you make it. And then there's a saying, in when you're in the AHL, it's all between the ears, right? Like all the guys in the AHL are all skilled enough. It's just a matter of how you think about your game, yourself, how you fit into like a lineup. And I think the amount that you're willing to sacrifice, the amount that you're willing to kind of change, in order to get there and then stay there.
Were you surprised that you started to enjoy fighting in a sense?
Yeah. So hindsight's 2020. There were a lot of things that happened along, like when I moved away from home and we went through a lot of hazing in my rookie year. And so these things like shaped me into that person that you saw on the ice, into Carbomb, that really at that time, like my first 5 years in the NHL, like I really did enjoy hurting people. But it was on the ice, I think it's hard for people to separate out that like I'm a completely different person off the ice, because there were different rules. And as soon as you touch that puck, like when you sign that contract to play professional hockey, it's different. There's a unspoken code. There's a lot of nuances that happen within the game and around the game. And I honestly like started to surprise myself a little bit when I was in the AHL, but I played the game extremely hard. Like I always played that way. I always hit. I always liked being hit. And it's just something that you have to be honorable, right? Like in my, like the way that I grew up, if you make a big hit back when we were playing, you're fighting, like for sure. There's no way that you're going to get out of it, or a guy on the other side was going to go after one of your skilled guys. So you might as well just get it over with. And so from that sense, I just kind of knew getting into a league of grown men, like I was going to have to step up, and I wasn't going to be able to kind of turtle and let other guys fight my battles.
Did you find that the league changed over time in terms of how that code played out on the ice? And was it more just the league is changing over time, or was it different from team to team that you played on in terms of how that role was approached?
Well, when I got into the AHL, like there were still signs with Dennis Bonvie, like give blood, fight Bonvie, and there were still guys that just went out and at the beginning of every game, and the coaches would put the two heavyweights, and they would drop their gloves for no reason, just other than to get the crowd into it. And I always, like, although I respected that, I never really understood it. Like my thing was always, make the guy earn the fight. Like, if I'm going to fight you, you either have to make a big hit, or there has to be a really good reason for me to do that. Like I either have to go, oh, we're down 2 or 3-0. Well, I'm going to go earn a fight. It's not like somebody's just going to give me one. So I go run around, I smoke somebody, and then I earn it. And then if I win the fight, get a big hit, then all of a sudden you can shift the momentum back into your favor. So I always did it for a reason. I was never one unless something happened the game before, where like we're going to start this game by just getting rid of that, the consequences for somebody's actions. But so I started seeing that heavyweight role really start getting weeded out of the game, and you had to be able to play. You really did. And, by the time I finished my career in 2015, there weren't that many, maybe each team had about still one semi heavyweight, but they could play. They were like a Reeves or like they had to be able to at least, hold water on the third and fourth line. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that I witnessed as I was kind of, getting out of the league. And obviously now guys that fight like don't really fight at all, right? And so you're seeing that, but that's still that code that's being adhered to, right? If you make a big hit, no matter who you are, you're going to have to answer to somebody.
You mentioned a code. Talk to me about the relationship between enforcers on and off the ice.
Yeah, we're all friends, we're like, we're the first guys that we'll go and like, if we see each other, say after the game and the away team's not leaving and you're at the same bar, like you'll go and buy the guy a beer and say hello. And, even guys that you haven't met, like I did a podcast with Dale Weiss a long time ago. And he's like,
Nice.
he brought me into his mind. He's like, man, you were like a guy that was beating everybody up and and I needed to fight you, right? I needed to get on the map. But I wasn't just going to give him one. And so like kind of had to like go earn it. But it's cool to listen to that type of mentality because you don't see yourself that in that light when you're playing. But no, I mean, most of the tough guys are guys that did that role or grinders, people that went out and like sacrificed their body for the good of the team. They're all really good guys. And honestly, most hockey guys are pretty good dudes. There's not many bad guys in the bunch.
Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in online queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on the Philadelphia Flyers. And that is where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. One of my favorite features, you can see exactly what your view is going to look like before you buy those tickets with their in-app seat view feature. Their zone deals are also a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, you can save big. You can even find those NHL tickets for under $25. I recently used Game Time to grab seats for a concert at Madison Square Garden, and it couldn't have been simpler. I had great seats in minutes. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. You mentioned that, at a certain point, even enforcers had to play to a certain degree. Was there an underappreciated aspect of your game that you think people didn't pay enough attention to in terms of your skill?
That's funny you asked that. It's a good question. When I was in Philly and we were going into contract negotiations, I think there was this common misnomer that I took more penalties than I drew, when it couldn't have been further from the truth. Like I drew 90% more penalties than I took. And so like that stat, we brought that into like a contract negotiation. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and I mean, I think I got the recognition for being able to like be pliable or, chameleon-like, in the sense that I could go out with, Brad Richards and Jeff Carter and not look at a place, or Taves and Hossa. And then I could drop down. I could pretty much, play on any line, really. So, I don't think that there was too much overlooked about my game. Halfway through your career, you think you can do more. You think you can, just not be pigeonholed into a certain role of maybe like my first 5 years. I mean, I pretty much all I wanted to do was just make a name for myself and be known for somebody that could fight and that could handle themselves. So looking back on it, I went through a lot of years where I was like sick and frustrated and pretty angry at the league. And I look back on it now that I have my health and my brain back and my spirit back, that like just how grateful I am for being able to, play that long and for getting sick and for getting well, and all of the things in between, all the guys that I played with, and to be able to spend a decade playing professional sports, like a whole lifetime has already kind of gone by. It was a really great ride, and I wouldn't change anything. I really wouldn't. I can kind of see how perfect everything was the way it played out.
How, looking back now, do you separate out Daniel Carcillo on the ice versus Daniel Carcillo off the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I see them as two different people, really. Although, a lot of the things that fueled me, were because of like the way that I grew up, or the environment that I grew up in, or the environment that we came up in as rookies in junior. And I am almost like two different people, in the sense that when I was on the ice, it was the game was like a release for me, ever since a very, very young age. Like when I got to the rink, I was always, and I still am, enamored by the rules that people like live life by and play games by. And hockey was no different. So I found it very interesting that you could kind of leave this, I call it like civilian life that I'm in now, where it's pretty slow. It's sometimes boring, sometimes monotonous, but you can't live the other way for too long, because it's just so hard on the body and the brain and the spirit. So one of the things that I've really been working on and have done a lot of work and try to help guys with is, like, when they come out of the game, none of us just decide, oh, okay, I'm feeling great, like, why don't I step away from the game? It's always because we're either not good enough anymore, not fast enough, or we're hurt, or and we tend to not know like how special we are, in the sense of like our kind of human traits that we can use in this life afterwards. And so a lot of the work that I try to do now, just through like mimicking or trying to show a certain lifestyle, is to empower people to realize like how special they are, the skills that they have, and then how they can hopefully reapply them if they so see fit. Like if they want to do something outside of hockey, or get into business or entrepreneurship, or anything else than like a scouting job or a coaching job, then we try to just show them how attention to detail, how their work ethic, how all of these kind of skills that they already have can be applied to living a successful life after hockey.
Did you notice that there was maybe some of that missing as your career advanced and you were looking toward that? Or was it something you realized after you had officially left the game?
Yeah, I started to see some cracks when Steve Monador retired and I stayed in the league for another like year and a half. I noticed a lot of symptoms like that he had, I was starting to see, even, and one of the things that I really didn't realize was like when you stop, how quickly when you have no purpose, when you don't have that community anymore, how sick you can get and how fast that happens. And so I saw some of the cracks. I was starting to get a little bit worried. And then, things happened my last year. Steve ended up passing away. And I always say,
Right.
like, his death really saved my life, because he was looking into a lot of the same things that helped get me better. And, I just, it was a perfect storm, right? My son was born at the beginning of the year, his death, my 7th concussion, and then we won the 2nd Stanley Cup. And I was just like, all right, I think I'm done. And stepping away, you just try to one of the things, as we talked about before, like you fake it till you make it, or you ask for help, or you look to a guy that's done it before. Unfortunately, there weren't too many guys that I could look to that reinvented themselves after hockey. And because I was feeling so sick and I felt like I was on an island a little bit, I started to get really angry. And, luckily I had all the means in the world to try to get all the best help. But even that wasn't enough, after 4 years. So it was a scary time. But it's why I do the things that I do now. Just try to show guys and other concussion survivors too. It's not just about hockey players. It's only 3% of concussions are sport related, right? There's such a large market of people that have hurt their brain and really don't have a way out, so just trying to show that there's hope, and you can get really, really bad, but you can get well too.
What were some of the symptoms that you had after hockey as a result of what you did on the ice?
I had slurred speech, headaches, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, brain fog, brain fatigue, noise sensitivity, light sensitivity, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, appetite loss, a lot of weight loss. So, a good day was 5 symptoms and a bad day was, most of them. And I went through the medical system. The first thing they try to do, even with concussion survivors, is prescribe pharmaceuticals to kind of deal with the symptoms, right? And sometimes those exasperate other symptoms. And so I did that for the first 2 years. And I ended up kind of getting frustrated with that and going cold turkey, which I don't recommend. Had a couple seizures. So I was in a pretty bad spot in 2017, but it was the first time that I saw this study on mushrooms in the brain. And all of a sudden I saw that it was waking up these brain hemispheres in an FDA approved study. And I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't take the lifeline then. Then I went to kind of these stroke rehabilitation concussion centers, really started to learn about the brain, diagnostics. And it wasn't until 2019 that I was really at the end of my rope. Like I was really, really hopeless. And I took an invitation from a former teammate and participated in a journey, and it saved my life. It kind of brought everything back online. And what was interesting and what still fascinates me today about this medicine is it addresses, 3 different things that I think are really necessary in somebody's recovery journey. It's, neurologically, obviously I had deficits, so it woke my brain back up. Physiologically or psychologically, I was like really suffering with, these anxiety and depression. And then spiritually, I like had such a bad view of myself and the world around me. And I was really stuck in this kind of victimhood mindset. And you can see that come through with, kind of attacking what had happened as opposed to accepting it and then trying to move on and get better. So, that one experience like helped me immensely, and then a year later, no abnormalities in my brain scans. Doctors couldn't diagnose me anymore with mild dementia or early onset dementia. It was a pretty remarkable turnaround pretty quick.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today.
What kind of spurred you, or like when in this recovery process kind of made you turn a corner and say, oh, wait, I can help other people. It's not just me.
Yeah, so I was always like trying these different modalities, and I would take diagnostics and like brain scans, EEG or QEEG, and then blood work, right? Just to kind of see what was moving the needle. And so I took brain scans before I left in the summer of 2019 to go and do this mushroom experience, which was guided and, very structured and very supportive. And then I did another one 3 months later, and I retested my brain after 6 months. I really wanted to, every 6 months or so, I was testing. And when it came back with no abnormalities, I still had a couple symptoms. I'd say like 80 or 90% of them were gone. And so I wanted to wait a year. After a year, I knew that this was something that I just felt that was going to stay as long as I worked it, right, for the rest of my life. This is no magic bullet, but this is a really good way to reinvigorate and realign the brain, the body, the spirit, the nervous system. It's a potent anti-inflammatory. It promotes this neuroplasticity. So that's this knowing that now we can regrow brain hemispheres and work around this kind of trauma, which is pretty remarkable, because we always thought, well, the brain stops growing at 21 or 25, which isn't the case. And so, as I was moving through this and through my life, I just, a year came up and I was like, all right, I can start talking about it. It's very stigmatized. But one of the things that I don't think people really quite understand yet is that there's 2 companies with FDA breakthrough therapy designation. There's over 130 plus FDA approved clinical trials going on right now using mushrooms to treat depression, anxiety, PTSD, a whole host of symptoms. And so there's a lot of like really great clinical efficacy. So when I started talking about it, it's one of the deals that I made. I know this might sound strange, but when you're in these types of journeys or ceremonies and you're in an altered state of consciousness, this medicine can speak to you and you can speak back to it. And one of the first things it ever said to me was, we can get your brain better, but you have to use your platform to provide access. You've got to move on, with your life. And so I've kept that deal, and I still have my health and a pretty amazing life. So I'll continue on this path for the rest of my life.
Talk to us about that platform. What are you doing, and how can people who are looking for help reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. So what I've done is created a community called Experience Onward, where people can come in and just learn more about this, learn more about this type of treatment and how it can positively impact their life. And so we do webinars. We have access to regulated systems. This medicine is federally illegal, similar to cannabis, but there's medical programs being set up. So in Oregon and in Colorado, you can legally access this if you go to those states. And so what we've done is set up and regulated programs. They were on the ballot measures in each of these states. And what that's done is it has created a program that people can go into and access this medicine responsibly in a supportive manner. So the medicine is always tested. It's meticulously manufactured. There are individuals that can help people prepare and then also help them integrate what's seen. It's not just about this medicine. It's really about, having a positive experience, but then how are you living? What does your diet look like? What does your exercise routine look like? What does your community look like? What does your outlook on life look like? And how can you apply these lessons? And now that you're not dealing with a lot of these symptoms as well, you're immediately feeling better and you want to create these new habits. You've broken up these destructive ways of living and thinking, and all of a sudden, your life starts to improve rather rapidly. And then people want to talk about it. So a lot of the webinars, we have a lot of testimonials of former athletes, veterans, executives, curious beginners, people that have come through the program that have done really well and just want others to experience it as well. So that's what Experience Onward is. We connect people to these retreats in Oregon, in Colorado, and in Florida.
Just to wrap things up, what message would you have for the NHL as a whole and to players who are just about to end their careers in terms of, what to expect and what the league does and should be doing better to help support them?
Yeah. So, I don't really have a message for the NHL. I'm hopeful that, the NHLPA put $4 million towards, in the CBA talks towards the Alumni Association. So I'm hopeful that we can find a way to work together. We are going to be releasing data from our first, one of our first retreats with former UFC fighter, bare knuckle fighters, fighters from the UK, Canadian bobsledder. So a bunch of former athletes that have had concussion. And we took brain scans and blood work and epigenetic testing, gut microbiome before the retreat, and then directly after. And some of the results are really great. And these results aren't influenced by like placebo, meaning if you take somebody's brain scan before, treat them, and then take it after, and you can see that their brain is communicating better. That can't be by fluke. So I'm hopeful that they see this data and that we can work together. We're in talks with Johns Hopkins to partner with them for a first kind of in-human trial. So because we're doing this above ground, legally in these regulated formats, I really hope that this will kind of open the door to talking with the league and possibly the NHLPA and the NHLAA and get them on board. But really, what I tell guys now is like, I was a bit misguided in thinking that, after the league has some sort of responsibility to you afterwards. They don't. It's a business. And when you're under contract, right, with them, when you sign on the dotted line, that's when they have a responsibility to you. But their responsibility isn't going to be necessarily to, unfortunately, like take care of you and your health. That's kind of on you, and it's on the NHLPA. That's the reality. And so just know that it's a business. I'm all about the truth, and if it's a business, a lot of guys are very proactive now in their own lives, right? About taking care of their diet, and they know getting hit in the head isn't great. And so if you have been hit in the head, or you find yourself kind of getting on Christmas break and feeling down and energy levels are low, and you have time to do research, right? What I would tell guys is we work with a lot of guys in the league, preseason, before a season starts, and then also helping them kind of wind down after a season. If this is something that interests you and you'd like to get a reset, then just reach out, and we can help educate and just take full ownership. Guys are smart enough to understand, I think, in this day and age, to not rely on some of these leagues and to just be proactive with their own health.
All right, Daniel Carcillo, thank you so much. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Gil. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You could find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rachel, I know that you will be back tomorrow with Erica L. Ayala for the Women's Hockey Spotlight. Looking forward to that. I'll be back on Monday interviewing 3 of our local hosts to discuss the biggest stories from around the NHL. Want to thank again Dan Carcillo for joining us today and talking about his career, his life, and his advocacy right now. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.